Okay, perfect. We'll get going. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the three-part Career Basics series for She is the Music. I'm Melody Shasavrani. I'm part of the mentorship committee along with Cynthia, who's the global co-chair of the mentorship committee with Susan Dodas, who puts all of this basic series together. I was very happy to plan this Career Basics series with her. Today, we'll be talking about the interview process. Last week, we talked about resume basics. So if you missed that, it is now live on our YouTube channel. I'll drop the link in the chat after. This will also go live on our YouTube channel along with next week's program. It's the finale. It'll be the basics on that entry-level position, the assistant coordinator live. I'll be moderating and I'll be joined by assistants from ABC Studios music department along with WME. So before we get started, Tierra will be our moderator, but I just want to remind everyone, please mute yourselves and drop questions in the chat. I'll get to them during the talk, or definitely we'll save them for the end. So I will pass it to Tierra so we can get started.
Thanks, Melody. Hello, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Tierra Bradley. I am one of the recruiting managers at Universal Music Group, part of the People, Inclusion, and Culture team. I actually sat on last week's panel, so super excited to be back with all of you. So, last week, as Melody mentioned, we discussed how to build your resume. So really excited to be moderating this session, really focus on the interviewing. And I always say this, the interview process is probably one of my favorite parts of the recruitment life cycle, because it's essentially how you land the gig for the most part. And, the best part of today's panel, in my opinion, is that we're getting insights from, the hiring manager's perspective via Cynthia and Rachel. They're both execs who have hired and built teams over the course of their careers, as well as insights from a professional career coach via Marli. So, as Melody mentioned, again, any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I'll start by properly introducing our panelists. So first up is Cynthia Sexton. Cynthia's experience in the music industry spans over 35 years. Currently, Cynthia serves as EVP of Music Curation and Creative Sync for Universal Music Group and the Global Co-Chair of Mentorship for She is the Music. Prior to her current role, she served as EVP of Partnerships and Content, helping launch the new Polygram Entertainment Film Division, and as EVP of Brand Partnerships and Licensing for Def Jam, Island, and Republic Records. Prior to moving to UMG in 2012, Cynthia held various senior executive roles at Virgin and EMI labels and music publishing, including Head of Business Affairs, SVP of Strategic Marketing and Business Development, and ended her career at EMI as EVP of Global Brand Partnerships and Licensing. So welcome, Cynthia. Next up is Rachel Levy. Rachel began her career at Universal Pictures in 2010. She has supervised music and soundtracks for Universal's record-breaking franchise, Fast and Furious, and every title to date for Illumination, including Despicable Me, Secret Life of Pets, Sing 1 and 2, The Minions, as well as The Grinch. She was also a key member of the music team that created the soundtracks for all 3 installments of the record-breaking 50 Shades of Grey franchise. Levy has spent the last 20 years working in film music. Before her post at Universal, she was Senior Vice President of Film Music to the Weinstein Company / Dimension Films, supervising numerous films for both companies. She is a member of the Recording Academy and an alumna of the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome, Rachel. And then last but not least, we have Marli. Marli was also on last week's panel, but for those of you who aren't familiar with her, Marli Crowe is new to Los Angeles by way of Atlanta. She graduated from Spelman College, where she earned a degree in economics. Upon graduation, Marli ventured into corporate America, starting as a data analyst at Nielsen. She's worked in data analytics, sales, marketing, advertising, and technology roles throughout her career. As she moved up the corporate ladder, she saw fewer people who looked like her and set out to help diverse professionals achieve career success. Marli founded Crowe Career Services in 2018, specializing in resume and cover letter writing, LinkedIn optimization, interview prep, and career coaching. In 2019, she founded her workwear boutique C-Suite. In 2021, she combined the two businesses under C-Suite, your one-stop career destination. Shopsuite.com is the only website where you can get a resume and interview outfit in the same cart. To date, she's helped over 150 clients land executive roles at top companies such as Google, Delta, and Accenture. And she's helped them dress for the most memorable career moments. C-Suite helps every boss land the job and look the part. So welcome back, Marli. Alrighty. So just to kind of kick things off a bit before we jump into the interview portion, just really wanted to spend a couple seconds chatting through the pre-interview, which is pretty much what we call like the phone screen, typically happens with the recruiter. This conversation happens, of course, prior to your meeting with like the hiring manager and or the hiring team. And the recruiter will typically, provide insight into the position, the team, the company, while also, assessing your qualifications for the role. And, this pre-interview is really, the purpose of it is to prepare you for your conversation, with the team, to understand your motivation for wanting to join this organization, for wanting to leave your current company if applicable, what your interests are, etc. So did want to sort of start there. As well as mention that during this conversation, you will also discuss salary expectations, which is what we touched on last week. So just wanted to surface that as well. So, if the conversation with the recruiter goes well, you'll of course get recommended for next steps, which essentially is an interview with the hiring manager and the hiring team, which brings us to our first question. So, how a candidate presents themselves in an interview plays a crucial role in the final decision, right? So what are some of your best tips for a successful interview, whether in person or on Zoom? I know a lot of companies have transitioned back into the office, but there are still, many interviews happening, virtually as well. So maybe we can start with Cynthia.
Let me start by unmuting myself and saying thank you to everybody for joining us today on behalf of She Is the Music. We're really excited to have you guys here. As you said, Tierra, we live in a different world now. We have Zoom interviews, which we could never have imagined years ago, and we have in-person interviews. And we're also going to take into consideration where we're hiring somebody who is fresh out of college and what that looks like and what we're looking for in somebody who's new into the work stream or somebody who's been in the work stream for a long time. But at that, there's still some basic things you have to know. And it's surprising how many people, even those who've been in the workplace, don't know what they are. Starting with, if you're on Zoom, your background. We don't need dogs barking, people running back and forth, unmade beds, you name it. And you'd be surprised at how many times we see that in an interview. So your Zoom background is really important. Arrive early. Don't be late. No excuse in an interview is a good excuse, guys. It just doesn't. It's kind of puts a negative spin on your interview right away. So always be early, never be late. Give yourself more time than you think you need in traffic and be there on time, or at least try to be early if you can. When you're walking into the room, make eye contact, shake hands. Let me know who you are. Let me look into your eyes, and you should look into my eyes. Dress the part, which I know Marli will speak a lot about. And I would say, do a little bit of research, even on me. So I know that you've taken an initiative. And I would say those are the basics. Again, whether you've been in the business for a while and you're coming in for an interview, or whether you're fresh out of college, you should know these things.
Awesome. Awesome. Super helpful. And also I have a pup myself, so sometimes the dog barking in the background is inevitable. So
Yes,
I completely that resonates with me very much. But on that note, Rachel, can you talk a little bit about the importance of, of research, as a candidate is preparing going into their interview? We'd love to hear a little bit about, why that research component is important, but also what they should be researching.
Pensar en el hecho de separarnos.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. It's so nice I'm so excited to be here today. So nice to see everybody in their respective squares. I think it's important not just to research me or Cynthia, but also research the company. Like what kind of projects, I mean, all of this stuff is, with Google or, various trades, you can really find out like what people are working on, what the company's working on. And you don't have to go too in depth and know every single last detail, but I think it does help to come prepared, and it will help you explain why do you want to work there. I just to add to some of the other things that Cynthia said, try and be comfortable too. I mean, we're just people as well. I think it's hard to tell people not to be nervous. I'm still nervous when I go into a room with a bunch of people, but the more comfortable you can be and self-assured, the better. I was going to say, and I wrote some notes here. I'm so sorry, I'm looking at them. In addition to, in my experience, people who kind of come into a room knowing a little bit about the kinds of movies that we've released and are able to kind of connect that to like why they want to work there, the better.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. Marli, I know Cynthia alluded to this a bit ago, but, as the owner of a workwear boutique, can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of the outfit, right? It's part of preparation. So if you can share some insights on the fit and, the differences between, dressing for an on-site interview versus a Zoom interview.
Yeah, so dressing is still very important, especially even in the music industry. It is a more relaxed environment, but still you got to put your best foot forward. I'm still for a blazer and a nice pair of slacks for an interview. Full suits are we're kind of phasing out of the full suit, but if you have a fly one, a C-suite one, then you can wear that one. But in just a plain blazer and some trousers or slacks are always a good vibe. Just to always cover your shoulders. I think on an interview like this, even me, I get distracted by shoulders sometimes. So I think a nice cardigan, a blazer is good. Definitely still dress up for Zoom interviews. I think another thing mentioned too, Cynthia alluded to that, but making sure you're in a room. I kind of get offended when I'm interviewing someone and they're in the car and I'm like, you knew this was coming up, like you couldn't find 5 minutes to get into a quiet room. So that's really important, making sure you're in a quiet room and still dressing up from the neck up or the waist up for an interview is really important. And so, yeah, even if it's a casual environment, no jeans, I would say, until you start.
Okay, awesome. I thank you for that, because I was curious to get your perspective. As you mentioned, the music industry is super casual. You walk through the halls, you see jeans, t-shirts, sneakers. So, appreciate the perspective on how you should dress, even if you are interviewing for a role or an industry that's a little bit more casual. Awesome. So just to transition into some of the interview questions, as you are, interviewing and having your conversation with these candidates, what are we asking them? So Cynthia and Rachel would love to get your perspective on some example questions that may come up in your conversations with candidates.
Well, again, I would say that it's dependent on the level of candidate, right? Whether it's a college entrant or somebody who's been in the industry for a while, that really matters a lot to me. And I think the thing that everybody has to understand that by the time you get to Rachel or myself, we all already know that you've got certain qualifications, you are a candidate. So we're not really looking for you to regurgitate when we ask questions. So the first thing I will always say is, tell me a little bit about yourself, which doesn't mean I want you to regurgitate everything on your resume. I already know that because I've read your resume. What I'm trying to get to is who you really are. And that will be dependent, and the kinds of questions that I may ask will be dependent on whether I'm actually hiring you to be my assistant, as I did with Melody a few short years ago. I want to know that I can connect with her on a sort of other level, because we're going to work very, very closely together. I have hired people when I've worked across huge divisions with hundreds of people in small departments. And so depending on the role you're hiring for, if I was hiring for business affairs in music, that would be slightly different than I'm hiring in a creative role in music. So let's say it's a creative role in music, and you're college level, right? You've just come in and you don't really have a resume. I want to know about your passion for music. I want to know maybe that you've worked at the college radio station. I want to see that you've maybe sort of built a resume before you even got to the point that you left school, because in music at the entry level, and this is just entry level for a second, what I'm looking for is passion for music. The rest of that stuff I can teach you. Okay, so I'm looking for that college. Now, if you've been in the industry for a while, I'm looking for something completely different. So what music do you like is a big one for me in creative. So I'm, again, depending on how deep, look, if you're coming into work in a business affairs level, doesn't necessarily mean you need to know everything that's going on in the charts and understand every piece of music and all the genres. But I can tell you, in Rachel, in my role, you know, if you're coming into a creative role, you better know a lot about music and be able to talk about it. Like, you know, not sort of, if I ask you what your favorite artists are, you should be able to tell me right away. So first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself and creative role. What music do you like? Very simple.
Same for me as well. I would say, you know, I really want to know, like, I want people to work in our department who want to be there for the right reasons. So that's a really big part of it for me. You know, why do you want to be a music supervisor? You know, what brings you here? Like, is this your passion? I've actually had some people sit down and say they really want to be, you know, their interest is really to be a screenwriter or a performer. And that's a really bad tactic for getting a job in a music supervision department. So not that any of you would do that, but it's actually happened. But yeah, I agree. Sometimes I go and I talk, if people have some experience, I'll kind of push them to talk a little bit about, you know, experiences they've had in the workplace, something that's really challenged them, you know, something that they, you know, maybe a film or a project that they wish they would have supervised, like what made you really jealous and excited, you know, what kinds of projects, you know, would be your dream projects to work on. But ultimately, when people come in, I want to get them talking. I want to know that they're confident and can hold themselves in a room, you know, not just with me, but potentially, you know, the people that I work with. You know, Cynthia and I both deal with, you know, other big executives, in my case, directors and producers, songwriters. And I want to make sure that, you know, I'm being represented in an amazing way, and also our department. So it's, some of that comes down to just getting to know a little bit about the person and how they interact.
Awesome. And just to go back to the tell me about yourself question, I feel like that sometimes trips up candidates because they don't know exactly how to answer what it is that you're looking for. You know, any thoughts on that in terms of how they should approach that question?
Is that for me?
You can go
Sure.
first. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, a big part of this is, and this is a hard thing because there's the soft skills that you learn, how to read a room, right? You know, if you've done a little bit of research on Rachel or her company, you know, you should be able to come with some goodies, but it's also Rachel and my job to pull some stuff out of you. You know, what we also want to see is the authentic you. And I think Rachel touched on this earlier, and it's so true. Everybody's nervous in an interview. It does not matter what level you're entering at, you're always nervous. So, so trying to put yourself at ease and sort of in your brain doing what you would do for any exam really is getting yourself a little bit prepared, learning a little bit about that person, finding any places where, for example, you just have to go on LinkedIn and see Rachel and I's profile. Like maybe you have been to Scotland and you can find a way to connect with me around the fact you've been there. Those things break down those barriers and also let Rachel and I see the authentic you. We're not looking for the robot you. We're looking for a person that's the real you, the authentic you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it can be as simple as, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? What kind of music you like very basic things. It's that question for me, and I think for Cynthia too, is just to get you talking a little bit and to kind of get into things. So you feel, we're trying to make you feel comfortable too. So it's an entry point for a conversation, really.
Marli, does this ever come up in your conversations, as you're prepping candidates for interviews?
Yeah, and my advice for it is just tell a story. Your interview, I treat it kind of like you're getting coffee with someone and you're telling them about yourself, and just be as authentic as possible. But, you don't have to start like, I was born on a farm. No, you just say, I'm from here, but always still bring it back to your resume. I'm a lover of music. I've always loved music. I went to Spelman because they had a music program, and then I started doing this, and then bring it back to, and that's why I really want to be a music supervisor. So you're kind of going over your resume, but you're also telling a story. And I did also want to add to, if you're interviewing for, Universal and Universal Music or Universal Pictures, those are really cool companies, but avoid trying to sound like you just want it for that. Like, so don't say, I just always wanted to work at Universal. I mean, you and a lot of other people, but why do you want this role? Because I've seen that when I was working at a cool tech startup, like, I saw it on Forbes and it just looked cool. Okay, do you really want to work here, or do you just kind of want to be able to say you worked at a tech startup? So really bring it back to why you really want to work there, and back to the role itself.
And why you would be an asset. Like what would you bring?
Exactly.
Awesome. And I know a lot of the times, especially within UMG, the interviews tend to be on a more conversational side. As you all mentioned, it's, we want to get to know you and, what you do, what you've done, what you bring to the table. But there are instances, and I guess depending on the type of position, where, behavioral interview questions are being asked, right? So it may be less conversational and more, tell me about a time when. So Marli, I'm going to punt this one over to you. Can you talk to us a little bit about, how candidates can prepare and answer these types of questions when they are being asked about like real life on the job scenarios?
Yes, so I always task my clients to keep some scenarios on hand. So funny, I use the same scenario in almost every interview, but you can switch it around for the question that they ask. Also, always answer in the STAR method. So that's situation/task, action, and result. So it's either tell me a time when, or describe this. So you have that same scenario. When I was working at Nielsen, XYZ happened. I did this. As a result, I reduced the delivery time by something. So that's the STAR method. What you did, how did you fix it, and then what was the result of it? So everyone has some type of scenario in their resume. Just always keep that top of mind, because they're not going to ask you a behavioral question about a specific role. It's up to you to decide which scenario you want to bring up. So just always have the scenario top of mind and have it already in your mind in the STAR method as the answer. And so I could put that in the chat as well again. But yeah, again, situation, task, what you did, and what was the result. And to Rachel's point, that's going to make you seem like an asset, because, oh, wow, at that company, she helped them reduce delivery time, or she helped them save $1,000. Okay, if we bring her over here, then she can have that same impact for us.
Awesome. Cynthia, Rachel, any thoughts on behavioral interviews? Is this, is this stylistically, is this something that the two of you do? What has that looked like for you, for you two, as you're having conversations?
I definitely try to work that question into something, probably more with people who I'm hiring that are a bit, like coordinator, manager, director level than assistant. There's just, they may be an internship here or there, but I don't want to put anyone in an awkward position if they haven't really had that many experiences to discuss. But I think it's a good question. I mean, it could translate into life in different ways too. It doesn't have to be a workforce situation. I don't know, Cynthia, what do you think?
No, I would agree with you. And again, I know I keep saying this, it does depend on at what level you're hiring. Somebody who's in college, they maybe not have any scenarios to really talk about. Maybe they've had an internship, maybe they're coming straight out of college. But I will always ask a behavioral question, always, because again, I'm trying to get to the sort of the nut of the person, but also at the end of the day, I want to know how that person's going to elevate my department in some way. And that's a good way to get to that by, having them tell me something that they did that moved their department or their themselves sort of forward in some way.
This may be slightly off topic, just a little, but this industry is there's a lot of social aspects about what we do. And so I think overall, I'm really looking like, whomever I am sitting with, can they have a conversation with me? I think that's really, I don't take that for granted. I mean, sometimes it's really, really hard to have, to sit across from somebody and actually have a one-on-one back and forth conversation. And I think that's really important to just point out that, half the battle is just being able to have a full conversation with someone to get a sense of who they are.
Awesome.
That is so true, Rachel. So true.
Have either of you, and I know this is popular amongst execs when they are, interviewing for certain types of positions, they may take a candidate out for coffee because how you show up in like a Zoom interview or, something of that nature can be a little bit different in more of a social setting. So is that something that the two of you have done or do currently when you're meeting with candidates?
I can say categorically that I haven't done that. Maybe I'm old school. It just feels like the interview setting is part of the whole process, right? It's not designed to make you uncomfortable, but there is something to be said about having you in a setting that has you sort of stepping up to, what we're looking to see. I think a coffee shop or whatever can actually have the opposite effect. It makes it a little too casual. But that's just me, that different strokes for different folks. I generally like to be in an office setting when I'm interviewing, but again, that's just me. I think it's just, everybody's got their own way of looking at it, I guess.
I can think of once or twice that maybe I have, but it was on a third or fourth round.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't take these lightly. And I mean, there's a number of, oops, oh no.
You're still
sorry.
on.
Someone just called me. I was like, what happened? We don't take them lightly. So we meet with people a number of times before we actually hire them. So, maybe on a third or fourth, just to make sure, I think a more casual setting isn't a terrible idea, but I'm like Cynthia, for the most part, we are in an office.
Okay, perfect. To switch gears to, to making a decision, right? You've interviewed a number of candidates, you've been having amazing conversations. So when it comes down to making a decision on a candidate, whether it's to, move them forward or not, one thing that I hear quite a bit in sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in is, around culture fit. It tends to be a bit of a buzzword amongst hiring managers. Again, as a rationale to determine whether or not someone should progress in the process. So, curious to get your thoughts on, culture fit. What does that mean to you? How important is personality and, on the spectrum of personality versus, hard skill set? What does that look like?
Well, I can say, look, I've pretty much worked in the music industry all my career, mostly inside labels, and there's a culture. And by the way, inside different labels, there's very different cultures across the board too. I would say that Rachel and my experience, her being in film music, you know, it does appear to be a little more casual, and it is, but it's still a work environment. We still expect people to work hard. But in terms of sort of making that final decision after we've gone through all of the, you know, the different variations, and I've got one or two candidates, you know, what's the decision? I'm distilling pretty much all the information I've gotten, and then I'm mapping against what the job is, what's the size of my department? Because again, you know, when you have 100 people working for you versus 3 or 4 people, that candidate's personality and how they, you know, whether you feel that they've got hustle, because we talk about hustle all the time. Rachel is smiling because, you know, we want to know it's fast paced. This is not, you're not going to be sitting back relaxing if you're coming into any job in the music business. So I'm literally, and there's no way to explain this other than I'm just distilling all this information about those 2 candidates, if I'm down to 2 candidates, and thinking, will that person fit into my 4-person department or my 100-person department? Do they have the hustle? Do they have the kind of personality that's going to fit in with everybody else in the department? All of those things go into a big pot that's stirred. And then ultimately, you know, you'll always see a candidate that just somehow rises up. And it may just be that you had some kind of chemical connection in the moment, because that can happen. And especially when it's, you know, and I can speak to this with her on Zoom. Melody here was an intern for me. I lost my assistant. Melody went back to college. I lost my assistant at the very beginning of COVID, and nobody knew. Like, how do you hire an assistant when you can't actually meet them? It was horrifying, terrifying for me, specifically being a little old school. But then I remembered this incredible intern that we had, who I loved. She was proactive. She was smart. She asked all the right questions, and I couldn't remember her name. And I had to ask, who's the intern, right? Anyway, tracked her down. She was still in college, ladies and gentlemen. She was still in college, and I hired her because I remembered all of those, you know, hard skills that she had. But again, she was in college. So I was really going after everything that I had seen her do when she was an intern. And I didn't have that much interaction with her. She was really interacting with the rest of my department, but they were saying good things about her and everything. She'd come in to talk to me with good questions. And so I remembered her. So again, is that secret sauce that it's hard really to say other than there's a connection, and you put all of that stuff in a hopper. I know that's long-winded, but that's the way I go about it, Rachel.
Yeah, no, all those things I completely agree with. I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't think about the dynamics of a department. I mean, that is a portion, but for me, it's way that the balance of what we think about is way more like, do you have the qualifications? Do you have the experience? We do check, recommendations. We talk to people, do I think you're going to be proactive, multitasking? Are you interested in music supervision for the right reasons? What are your passions, your personality, all of those things kind of mixed up into a big pot. Those are the things that I think altogether that we look at for the, in candidates. But, yes, I think in the sense that, will you fit into a department who is all passionate about music supervision and their work ethic, is, high, and that's a thing that people consider for sure, if that makes sense. But it's really about your qualifications over everything.
Awesome. Marli, any thoughts on this? I know when it comes to culture, it's all subjective. So just from your perspective, curious to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, and I kind of saw someone ask this in the chat as well. I always say when you're interviewing somewhere, you're also interviewing there and you're deciding if this is going to be somewhere that I want to work at, right? So think about, to Cynthia's point, this is very fast paced. If you're looking for a job that's more relaxed and probably remote and not asking a lot of you, maybe this isn't the right fit for you because music is playing all the time, so you got to always make sure it's a good culture fit for you. Also, there's a few ways that you can stand out in the interview. Just to Cynthia's and Rachel's point, the things that made people stand up, asking good questions. Always come to an interview with 2 or 3 curated questions. And a lot of times throughout the interview, you'll come up with a question, and that's a good thing that shows that you're listening. So, oh, okay, I heard you mention this mentorship program. Can you tell me more about that? So it's like, oh, wow, she's listening to what I'm saying and she's coming up with proactive questions. Also sending a thank you email. That's something when I've had 2 people I've had to decide for, I a lot of times I go with someone that sent that thank you email, and it just shows that they cared and they really want it. So those are a few things, but in regards to culture, just think about your values and what's important to you. I'm at a point in my career, I want a remote environment because I have a lot going on, obviously, I want a diverse environment. I want an environment where they're going to train me and allow me to grow and I can get opportunities. So just think about what you want in your first job and don't ever just take the first thing that's given to you. When you're interviewing and you're applying, make sure you're finding somewhere that you're going to want to be, because you don't ever want to take something just for the title or the money or the company and then you're not fulfilled.
Yeah. Can I add on to that and just say, you're interviewing me too? Like, ask questions like, where did you come from? And how did you get to where you are? Like, I mean, that in itself just it allows you to have a bit more of a conversation and, kind of gives you some insight to me too. Like, I could be crazy. I'm not, but I could be. And, you'll get a better sense of it, if the more questions that you ask.
Yeah, and it does make for a more rounded two-way kind of interview where it doesn't feel stilted, like you're just sitting there answering all my questions, and it allows, to Rachel's point, for an actual conversation. And you're interviewing us. You want to know if Universal Music Group or Universal Pictures is a place you want to work, or if it's me that you're actually going to work for. Like, do you get a good vibe about me, or do you think I'm the Wicked Witch? Do that's all that stuff is important. So it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think it just all goes back to impression, right? That's essentially what sets you apart from the competition. And we talked about this last week where, at UMG, we get hundreds of applications for just one position. So if you're lucky enough to make it to the interview, it's all about, standing out and making a really good impression. So appreciate the insights there. I did have a follow-up question, though. I know this comes up a lot of time with hiring managers where they're asking the candidate, towards the end of the interview, is there anything else that you want to share that we may not have discussed? Is that something that Rachel, Cynthia, you ever ask candidates?
I always ask them, because don't assume that half the time, even, Rachel and I are very busy executives. We're on a clock. We can miss things. Just because we haven't asked you the question doesn't mean, quite frankly, it's not that pertinent, because sometimes we do. So always feel free to ask anything that you think has been missed out or that you're really interested to know. Don't assume just because we haven't asked a question that it's not a good question. So again, this is your interview as well as my interview. Absolutely. I will always ask, is there anything else that you want to ask me, or anything that you would like to know about my company or me? Always.
Or that you want to tell us about yourself. Both ways.
Yes, both ways.
And to close us out, I know, Marli, you touched on this, but the thank you email, would love to hear your perspective in terms of the importance of that, right? And how a candidate should craft that message.
Yes, and like I said, it is so important, and it's so crazy how many people actually don't do it. still in this day, because I still interview people for my day job, and it's something that's really going to help you stand out. And it's not just a hi Cynthia, thanks for interviewing me, but always mention something that you guys talked about in the interview. Hi Cynthia, it was great meeting with you. I loved learning what the day-to-day of the music supervisor is, especially working with cool artists like Rihanna. She's my favorite, and I'm more excited about this role after speaking with you today.
Mhm.
And that's great. It shows you're important. It keeps the thread going too. So if she's gonna follow up with you, she could follow up directly on your thank you email because you already started that thread. It just shows that you're interested. It shows that you cared. That's also, if you feel like you forgot something, mention it in the thank you email. Thank you so much. I had a great time talking with you. I forgot to mention that I also had this internship, and after speaking with you today, it made me remember, and I definitely feel like I would be a great fit for this role. And I look forward to hearing from you about next steps. I think that also puts the fire under them to respond to you, even if you are rejected or accepted. They're going to be like, okay, at least I got to follow up with Marli because she reached back out to me. So I think that's great. I also too thank the recruiter as well that made that connection. So I'll say thank you, Tierra, for introducing me to Cynthia and Rachel. I really enjoyed speaking with them because that also creates the relationship with the recruiter. Because even if you don't get it, the recruiter will remember you. And sometimes recruiters will be like, okay, Marli didn't get in, accepted for that role, but another role might come up. And so now Tierra will follow up with you because she has your email and you reached out and thanked her. So it's so important. And good templates are a good Google search away, but Forbes, Muse, there's a couple websites that have some good templates.
I can't agree more with you, Marli, on that, we may have interviewed many people for this role, so it's not always easy to remember who's who in the zoo, right? I think it was Marli, but I can't remember. So a thank you email is really a good idea. I mean, you should always thank, and the recruiting part of thanking the recruiter is so important because again, it may come down to two candidates that are really good, and ultimately you've got to pick one, but the other one could be fantastic. So we also don't want to lose sight of that other candidate that might be good for some other role somewhere in the company. I will say one other thing, and it's, in this day of texting and emailing, and this will be very old school, but it works for me. And this is for me. It's very rare that anybody sends a card. You remember a card. Now, a card is not as easy to respond to as email, but if you put your email or some kind of phone number, and certainly what Marli said, a little bit to remind me of who you were, that's really important. For me, getting a thank you card is like, you just stick in my head, you just do. But again, old school, that could just be me, but definitely no text. Do not text us. We get bazillions of texts and we get a lot of emails. So you're always trying to do something that's going to make you stand out amongst all the other emails or all the other texts that we are literally going through all day long.
Yeah, and I wouldn't write a page and a half thank you either.
No.
Short, succinct, to the point, just making sure that we know you're interested too. I think that's important. I've definitely gone back to thank yous and emails and helped people who didn't get the job, like the second or the third. I've helped them get jobs. I went back to somebody that we didn't hire 3 years later, and he's working for us now. Like people do it. It really helps to kind of if you don't get it, replying and saying, thank you so much, completely understand, being grateful about it and not bitter and angry or sad, and it will come back. I promise it will.
I agree. I too have passed on people for certain roles and gone back to them for another role later because we've had a great interview and they've sent a great follow-up and they've just made an impression on me, which is lasting. So I think that's right. Make sure you thank the recruiter. Make sure you send a thank you to the hiring manager, even if you don't get the job. It's really important. You just never know when it's going to come back around again. You'd be surprised how often it does.
Awesome. I saw the chat. It's been buzzing. So I'm gonna kick it over to Melody, if that's okay, for some questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you everyone for sending questions. I got a few messages. Just want to clarify this one. Cynthia said she lost her assistant. The assistant just went to another company.
Oh, yes.
She did not pass.
She did not pass, no.
People were
I was-
worried. Thank you so much. She's fine.
Oh, thank you for asking. No, she was a wonderful assistant. She moved on to other pastures, but I have to say, I gained Melody.
Yeah.
It's very happy.
I just want to clarify that. But we got one question. This is from Madison. She says most recently she's done an interview and she's gotten the question, what are you looking for in a work environment, your ideal work environment? What would be your best tip to answer that? This could go to Marli or anyone on the panel.
Yeah, so this is just what I mentioned earlier. Think about what you want in a work environment. That's a question for you. It's a personal question for you to take some time and think about, what you want. Think about, even if you've never had a job, what was, that terrible professor or that one experience that you don't want in a job? The opposite of that is your, what you want in your work environment. Ultimately, you want something that's positive, non-toxic, welcoming, inclusive. Those are just some buzzwords, but ultimately it's up to you and what you want work to be. If you want something where you can get home and still be with your family, that a busy, fast-paced environment might not be for you. So it's ultimately up to you to think about the environment for yourself.
And I agree with that. And, again, things have changed a lot. Rarely are we doing 9 to 5, although music industry has never been 9 to 5, but 5 days a week in the office. There's all sorts of versions of hybrids. Some people do work from home some days. Some people choose not to work from home because they prefer a collaborative environment. But you should be asking those questions, because what you don't want to do is find out you got this job and you're going to be in the office 4 days a week and you didn't expect that, or you actually wanted to be in the office and you're going to mostly be on Zoom, and you wanted to be in the office because you wanted to feel the sort of buzz and excitement of being in an office. So that's a really important question to ask, is what kind of, hours, and is it hybrid? Will there be certain days a week that I'll be coming to the office or not?
But if
Definitely.
you're fielding the question the opposite way, if I'm asking it,
Right.
I don't know, that's a tricky one for me, actually. Like, I think you have to, you don't know, unless you really know what they're looking for. And let's just say you really want the job. If I hear someone say, I don't want to come into an office at all, or I'd prefer to be home, like that, I wouldn't mind that either, but that's not how our company works. So, I pay attention to those little things. So I guess it's, I like what Marli was saying. It's like the, inclusive, somewhere where I can grow, being as positive, just being careful not to say anything that might, kind of trigger like, oh, that's not the right person for this department.
Perfect. So I've gotten multiple questions like this in the chat, so I'm just going to combine all of it. It's basically people who don't have the traditional background in the music industry, whether it be from internships or not a music school, or their major or their minor completely isn't that, but they want to get that entry level position or just get their foot in the door, and you're interviewing them. I guess, what's the best way to present themselves in that interview, since they don't have background like other people?
I'll take that, and I'll say it's very difficult. And that's just the honest truth, is we have more, to Tierra's point, we have more people trying to get jobs inside our industry than we have jobs to support those people. So it can be challenging when you're coming to again, even if it's a first job, it can be challenging because there's you and there's everybody else. So if you went to Harvard Law School and you're looking for a job to be an A&R person, that's kind of, you're going to have to really show us why you're a better candidate than somebody who went to the Berklee School of Music and did XYZ. So it's challenging. And all I can say is put your best foot forward. I mean, look, our industry used to be much more nepotistic, where it was like, if you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, still works that way a little bit. It doesn't hurt if you know a big executive inside a company, you could try to get in that way, but it is challenging. I don't know about you, Rachel, but
Yeah.
that can be challenging.
I was trying to think about what I was going to say. I think I kind of stand by what I've been saying all along, which is, you know, being direct. Why do you want to be there? You know, and what do you think you could bring to the table? You know, just putting your, you know, your best foot forward in that respect. I'm not always looking for people with the most experience. I'm really not. I actually love the opportunity to kind of train people up and teach them. But I am looking for people who want to work in our department, in our office, in this industry for the right reasons. So that's really important to me.
Yeah, I would add, this is where you really push and emphasize your transferable skills. So yes, I went to Harvard Law School. I've been a lawyer for the last 10 years. I love it, but I've always been passionate about music, and I can bring my negotiation skills, my organizational skills. I know for someone that's a music supervisor, they need to be extremely detail oriented. I'm extremely detail oriented. And so though I don't have a music background, I have these skills that can bring a different perspective to the team. So that's like, okay, wow. So we don't have any lawyers on, maybe we need a lawyer on our team, you know, like that's going to make them change. So just speak to your experiences and don't downplay yourself. Yeah, I've only been, you know, the president of blah, blah, like, I know I don't have music, but I was the president of the I Love My Pet Club, and it required me to do a lot of XYZ. And that's why I really feel like I could do good. So just push your transferable skills and be confident and say, you know, in what you say. So don't downplay yourself, be confident and be like, look, I love My Pets Club will make me the best music supervisor. And, you know, it's about how you say it.
You know, I just want to add to what I said and sort of take back a little bit about what I said, and that we just came through our third melody mentorship program for She's Music, and we got a lot of amazing young mentees, and one of them was signed up for business affairs, and she is currently I think she's just about to leave law school. She's in law school, and she wants to be a lawyer, but she also wants to be in music. And so she came with this amazing project where she spoke all about how her love of Dreamville and everything she had done to connect to Dreamville. And she knew everything about Dreamville, which is one of the labels under Universal, and how she could bring all of her legal skills and business affairs skills to play at Dreamville if she was ever able to have that opportunity. That young woman, I took her resume and I got it to Dreamville, and I got it to some of our other labels, because she deserves to be working inside this company in some capacity. And so to, I think Marli's point too, even though she has a business affairs background, first of all, well, there's lawyers here. We have lots of lawyers who work at Universal. We have data analysts, we have accountants, we have A&R people, we have digital marketing, we have everything. But she was very, very clear that she had all these amazing legal and business skills, but that she was fanatically, you know, interested in being in music, and it really showed that passion. It came through in her project. She will work here. That's a fact. She just will. So show your passion. Don't take no for an answer. Keep moving forward.
Totally, I can attest to that. And then another combination question that we've been getting is, so creating, we have artists in the chat who are thinking about transitioning into the corporate side, and that's what they want to do. So what would be your suggestion on that? And we have one specific question that she's a performer, but also works in post, and she needs to create her LinkedIn. Is there an alternative to that? Is it okay to balance both? What are your thoughts? It's a two-parter. Yes, artist to corporate.
Sorry, to balance. Can you repeat?
Yeah, like one person's asking, I'm an artist, want to go to the corporate life. How do I present myself in that way? Obviously saying that I've put that in the past and now I'm here. And then another person has asked, she's a performer, but also works in post. And they've asked her to create a LinkedIn, but she hasn't created one yet. And she doesn't want too much public info out there. Is there an alternative since she's doing both at the same time right now?
Well, I think that the doing both, just to answer the doing both at the same time, if you're coming in to a role inside a corporate entity, whether it's film or film company or a music company, again, as a performer or an artist or a musician, you're on the ladder because you have certain skill sets that are you're not coming fresh. So it is absolutely possible for a musician or an artist or performer to transition into a music company. I'll let Rachel speak to her thing in A&R and creative sync. There's a whole bunch of areas that you can be involved. And I'm not sure I still understood the question, but if you're asking how you manage two different, sides of what you want to do, we're busy, fast paced. It is really difficult to try to do two things at the same time if they're not exactly aligned. That's number one. And number two, again, depending on what level you enter into the business, for some people, they'll enter into the business as an executive or have a contract which specifically does not allow them to do anything outside of their job. So you always want to be really clear whether this job that you're going out for is going to allow you to do other things on the side or not. I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're asking how, can you transition from being a performer to corporate life? Absolutely. I would imagine you'd bring a lot to the table, at least in our jobs, to go from one to the other. I can't, I wouldn't want anyone to tell me what I do with my time after hours. Of course, if you're a performer in the evenings, on the weekends, great. It's just when it starts to interfere with our work life, I think, again, that goes back to being at the job for the right reasons, not to get your music in a movie, but you really want to be a music supervisor versus a performer. That's where, that's the kind of question I would have back for you. But I think it's amazing. Anybody, it's a tough, there's only so many music supervision jobs. So that's tough, but I think it's amazing if you're a performer that you would want to transition and come over to this side. I think it would be an asset to us, really, more than anything.
I agree.
Perfect. So I know we have 4 minutes left, so just two last questions. The first one, how long should we talk about ourselves in response to the tell me about yourself? Like 30 seconds, a minute, and yeah, that's question number one.
Well, there's no time limit put on it, but it should make it short and sweet. We do, like, again, I want to know who you are. I want to get to the meat of who you are. But you don't need to, I think Marli said something. We don't need to know you were born here and you went to school there and your grandmother's name is and your pet's name is and so on and so forth. You really want to speak to things that are pertinent to the reason why you're there and just give us a little color about you and your personality and your background. So not long, but I wouldn't, again, it comes back to reading the room. There's a big part of that too. And I think if Rachel and I think you're waning on just a little too long, we'll find a very nice way to try to move you into the next part of the interview. So look for those cues.
Yeah, I would say on average, you have about half an hour. Would everybody agree with that? I don't know, Marli,
You mean
Tierra.
the full interview?
Yeah, for an
Yeah.
interview. So I think you have to really kind of pay attention to, like, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want them to hear about you? What do you want to learn? I can't stress that enough. Like, questions, like, kind of think about it in your head, how much time you want to allocate to each kind of thing.
Yeah, just to their point, there's no time limit. No one's whipping their iPhone out and their stopwatch. So you don't gotta like get it right at 30 seconds, but just try to, provide a little bit of personal information and a quick kind of add some meat to your resume. They already have your resume, so you don't want to regurgitate it, but hi, my name is, maybe where you're from. And I just start like, I went to school here and kind of work up my resume. And what I like to do too is add a little tidbit from each job. So like how I answer that really quick is just, hi, my name is Marli Crowe. I live in LA. I went to Spelman College. I started my degree at Nielsen. There I did blah, blah, blah. Then I went there. And then also that's where you can talk about why you switched and why you left and why you know, but again, just make it really short and sweet. Like mine is all of 30 seconds. So I started at Nielsen. I left because I wasn't feeling Chicago. So then you'll notice I moved to this account agency and I did this. Then I left to do that. And then I did this. And this is why I'm here. And so today but I've always been passionate about music and I've always wanted to be a music supervisor. That's just like really quick. Tell me about yourself. But at the end of the day, they still want to know about your background. So make sure you're answering that when they're asking you about, tell me about yourself. So don't forget to mention your work experience.
Perfect. Marli's answer actually answered the question, the part 2 that I had. So perfect. We are exactly at time that we had. So thank you everyone for coming to this. I want to thank the panelists and of course Tierra for moderating. Thank you so much again for participating. Again, just a reminder, this will be live on our YouTube channel along with the resume one that's live now. Next Thursday, same time, it's the finale. We will be talking about the assistant life. It'll be me joined with 2 other coordinator assistants from ABC Studios music department and WME. All RSVP info, same thing, will be on She Is the Music's Instagram very soon. And Marli, definitely plug Shop C-Suite. I'll drop that in the chat. Great website.
Yes, and I'll put the link, but I'm giving a discount code for everyone that joined today. And I did want to just add, as we're leaving, something I don't think we talked about is like when you don't get the interview, don't take it personally. There's a lot of things that happen that are outside of your control. You know, they might have already hired someone, the budget went away, you know, so don't take it personal. You're probably going to get through a lot of interviews and not get it. So just wanted to end on that note that don't give up, keep trying, and, don't take it personal. It could be things out of your control.
So true.
Amazing. Well, that is it. That is the finale. Make sure to copy what Marli just dropped in the chat. It will be super helpful for you guys, I promise. But we will see you guys next Thursday. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.